that's the philosophy of Bitcoiners, is that we are creating a money that is separated from the state. So now all of a sudden we have the state, right? So for us Americans here, our government is talking about establishing a big reserve, adopting Bitcoin. A lot of other governments have said the same, are doing so, already did so. Some are mining, some are just buying, some are accumulating. So this causes people who are, thinking about Bitcoin's cypherpunk roots and ethos to wonder if there's like a paradox of sorts, right? Like what's going on here? I thought this was all about freedom and pushing back against the state control over our lives. What's the deal with people rooting for the state now? So this is kind of the paradox, and I guess my thesis is that it's a little bit of a false paradox. I think that if you're going to have money that goes from zero to money that is globally accepted, dominant in some way, whether it be the reserve currency of the world or at least accepted around the world, the only way to get from zero to that is to have large institutions adopted along the way. I guess I would submit to you that government and sort of mega corporation adoption of Bitcoin is a sign of Bitcoin's success and not of its failure. At the end of the day, I don't think over the next 10, 20 years you're going to see a lot of governments and institutions, Fortune 500 companies, adopting like random shitcoins like in a serious way. I don't think that's going to happen. And I think because those things aren't going to have a big impact on the world. They're going to adopt Bitcoin. And I think, again, we should see that as a sign of its success, not its failure.
So you spent a lot of time, I think, in your writing and in your talks talking about how authoritarian regimes and tyrants around the world are scared of something like Bitcoin. How can we juxtapose that? In the U.S. we have, I think, big corporations go first, some hedge funds before that, some like institutions, but it was mostly individuals that brought it to that point, right? And early Bitcoin adoption, and then you started to have folks like Abby Johnson, like all the way to Larry Fink and Michael Saylor gobbling this stuff up. So it sort of makes sense in that trajectory when you look backwards. That's organic growth. Other regimes, right, might be a little bit more top-down. And we did discuss this a little bit on the spaces. So North Korea, very adept at hacking, particularly in the crypto industry. Iran, long time rumors that they were using excess energy to mine Bitcoin. China, Russia, certain involvement. But that's very top-down. How do you frame the juxtaposition of those two things and Bitcoin being a very good thing for democracies, but also on the other end of the equation, very bad for authoritarians globally?
Well, look, the adoption era of Bitcoin is very unique. I think after we get past the adoption era, it's unequivocally bad for totalitarians and tyrants to have a technology that moves power over the economy from the state to the individual. Unequivocally bad. There's just no way to spin it. It's worse for them. It's harder for them to maintain power. If you think about what a communist regime or a dictatorship needs to hold on to power, it's the ability to censor, confiscate, and close the capital markets. This is what they need. Bitcoin is the opposite. It's free speech, private property, and open capital markets for anybody, anywhere, right? So while there might be like a short-term way for rogue regimes or whatever to use this thing that benefits them in the short term, it's not a long-term, even neutral thing for them. It's extremely bad. However, I do think democracies can coexist with Bitcoin and do well with Bitcoin. I don't think that it's a bad thing in a true democracy. I just mean the meaning of the Greek word, government by the people. I don't think it's a bad thing that in a democratic government or society that the people have more control over the money and the economy. Those I don't think are contradictions. That should be okay. It will cause a massive change to democratic governments now because they're used to that not being the case. And they're used to being able to inflate, to pay for whatever they want, and to borrow on the national credit card for whatever it is, forever wars or crazy different schemes that are unsustainable. They're used to that right now because they really do control the money supply in a way that's not checked by the voter at all. And in that way, I think Bitcoin's an interesting extension of democracy because it kind of allows the population to check what voting cannot check. There are certain things that voting does very well. There are certain policies that are, it's very clear that parties in different countries differ on certain policies very clearly, like whether it be immigration or abortion or gun rights or environmental things, etc. There's some super clear policies where, at least let's say in America, Republicans and Democrats are very different. There are other areas where they're not that different, like bailing out Wall Street at the expense of the taxpayer would be a good example of where they're not different, right? So Bitcoin gives us a tool where we can make things different in that department. Like over time, it allows you to control your capital if you understand, again, what's going on. You can opt out of inflation and, for most people around the world, things like structural adjustment. And you can have more sovereignty over where you're going to spend, who you're going to spend it with, what you're going to do with it. That I think is going to be net good for democracies. It'll reform them. I think it'll get rid of some of our nastier externalities and some of the things we've done around the world that aren't so good. I think it'll help trim that down, and it'll make a better democracy. I think at the end of the day, America, as defined by kind of Bill of Rights style America, is super compatible with Bitcoin. I do not think like the Chinese Communist Party or Putin's regime or the Saudi kingdom are in any way compatible with Bitcoin and what it does. I think they can use it in the short term, but long term it's going to eat away and erode their power. It's very, very simple. At the end of the day, it's like a freedom virus. Like if your society and your control over that society is going to be eroded by the people having more control over their money, then this is bad for you. If it's okay that the people have more control over the money, then this thing shouldn't be threatening to you at all, which is why I don't think American politicians should be afraid of it. I do think dictators should be afraid of it, and they are afraid of it. They've expressed that, right? So Putin signed a law a year and a half ago outlawing Russians from using Bitcoin for payments. Xi Jinping 3 years ago basically banned every kind of major use of Bitcoin in society. So the tyrants have told us what they think about Bitcoin. They don't like it very much in terms of their population using it. They may like using it for themselves, but it's kind of like the Streisand effect.